The word blended is very common these days due to the effects of the pandemic. We're hearing about blending education and the rights and wrongs of it, but today we're trying out something different in our own studio. We're trying our blended church chat, which is incorporating a guest in person, maintaining the 2 metre distance, and some lovely guests on our Zoom call from distance. And we've got Bishop John Keenan from the Diocese of Paisley, we've got Grace Abernethy, a parishioner at St Mary's in Lanark, and we've got Ray Boyle, who's a parishioner from the Diocese of Motherwell. What parish are you from again, Ray? I forgot. St Bride's, perfect. So, and we've got Father Jim Grant with us in the studio, who is the guardian and the parish priest of St Francis Xavier Carfin and the Grotto at Carfin. So welcome everyone here today.
Thank you. Thank you.
So things are looking a lot more hopeful for us. Our churches in the Motherwell Diocese certainly have opened for private prayer, and parishioners who are able are flooding back to their churches for prayer. We've seen a great uptake. What's been your take on it, Father Grant, over the last few days at St Francis Xavier?
Well, we opened on Wednesdays, for 3 hours. The first day we had 70 plus, the second day we had 88 plus. 88 I think, and now today we're over 90, well over 90, maybe over 100 actually. So it's a beautiful day, so people have been coming out delighted to get back into a church and say a prayer.
That's brilliant. And the two lay members on this panel just now, I don't know if it applies to you, but have you made yourself present at the church, or you're not so sure about that just now? What's your thoughts on it?
I'm afraid I'm in the vulnerable risk category, and I won't be there on Sunday. I will try desperately to get back when Mass starts, and I would dearly love to be able to go just now, but I don't know. It's always been my innermost thoughts that prayer can be said anywhere, as long as it's meaningful and sincere. You can say it wherever you like. I know you have the lovely feeling of friendship and parishioners around you, and beautiful to see all these faces that were missed for so long, but I'll be holding on a wee while. Not just for myself in particular, but I would hate to, bring it home to my husband. Hopefully we won't be bringing anything home. And 2, I think our priests themselves are very precious and at the moment, and we need to really look after them too. Just my thoughts.
What's your thoughts, Ray, on that? Have you yourself been to your parish?
Yes, I mean, I generally go into Glasgow as much as anything for a variety of reasons, but certainly I've been finding it very interesting. I've not been able, obviously, to get to Mass in a physical sense, but what I have found really interesting is watching Mass, for 10 o'clock Mass, and then after that, being able to switch over to Rome to see the Pope live on television at 11 o'clock in the morning, and it gives you a fantastic perspective on what the world is like. We tend to be very focused on what we have locally, but then when you're able to do this on a Sunday, it gives you a different dimension to practicing being a Catholic when you see all the other things that are happening elsewhere live on screen right after you've been to Mass. So I found it a very, very interesting and uplifting experience during the whole time that we've actually been locked down. So I found it very helpful.
Yeah, and Bishop Keenan, obviously, as Grace has politely alluded to, our priests are mainly elderly, but have you been surprised by the almost agility of some of them, and to jump upon the technology and use it to its maximum potential?
I think it's been amazing, John Patrick. I would say that if 3 months ago, when we went into lockdown, I don't think we could ever have imagined, even dreamed, that there would be the revival of faith and devotion that we've undoubtedly seen, not just here or there, but right across the country, and certainly it seems to be the case across the English-speaking world at least. And it came almost immediately. I feel that within days, priests who didn't know, you wouldn't have thought would have known too much about technology, had managed very quickly to create pop-up studios in their oratories in the presbytery, to live stream online mass, or pop-up studios in their parish offices to deliver reflections, catechesis, just words of encouragement to their people. And I think that wonder was matched only by the marvel with which the lay faithful flocked to these masses, catechesis, spirit reflections, and the like. They seem to have an insatiable appetite for their faith, for devotion, to learn about their faith, to participate in online mass and adoration and the like. So it has really been quite wonderful, and there's no doubt about it that it has led to an increased love of, longing for, devotion to the essential things of our faith: Mass, the Blessed Sacrament, the Eucharist, devotion to our Blessed Mother, appreciation of the Church, an appreciation of our priests, a way we've come together as a family, which has been amazing.
I mean, what's really one of the reasons you're both, Father Jim Grant and yourself, Bishop John, are here is you've been one of both the leading lights in a sense in the Scottish Church. Biggest numbers, most devotions, daily mass, reflections, and it's been testimony to the hard work and devotion you have for your flock. You're maybe a bit more savvy with your technology than Father Grant, who's a self-described Luddite. But how have you found the situation, Father Grant?
You're talking about the clergy who've been able to do all this. I'm amazed at the lay people, elderly people in their 70s and their 80s. I've met some of them in the Grotto, and they said, I've just bought an iPad and I'm getting the internet put in next week, just so they can get Mass on a daily basis or a weekend basis. People who never owned a computer or a laptop or an iPad or had no internet went and got these things just so they could watch Mass. And I think that's a remarkable testimony to their faith and to the love of Holy Mass. And one parish priest told me in this diocese that in over 40 years of his priesthood, he cannot think of anything that he's done for which people were more grateful and expressed their thanks than streaming Mass.
Incredible. In terms of Grace, in terms of access to the Mass, obviously you're getting it every single day, and Ray's touched upon the variety and the depth we've got in our Catholic faith across the world. But what is missing from that experience? What you touched upon community, but is it truly really Mass we're seeing, or is it something like the virtual reality? Is it lacking in something?
Certainly, it's absolutely wonderful. I mean, had this all happened 20, 30 years ago, we would have had nothing like this. And I even know a lot of Bishop touched on, or Father Grant touched on, people becoming elderly people getting into technology, but also coupled with that is sons and daughters of these elderly people have been encouraging them so much. Come on, Mum, you've got to get this, that, the next. And they've been doing it. And they themselves have perhaps not been churchgoer a long time. So in a way, there's a wee bit fallout from there. And I don't honestly think it will ever, ever take the place of being at Mass. How can it? The actual presence there. How can it possibly? But we've had such a wonderful experience. And I know even in my own, I've been watching things and saying the Rosary far more often than I did get round to. And I watch one every night coming from St Eunan's Cathedral in Letterkenny, and they even say the last decade in Gaelic. I haven't a clue, but I know it in English, so I just say it in English. But there's all these things, and the most beautiful churches. Who ever knew that we had so many splendid buildings? They are buildings, but they are wonderful, and how much they add to the attraction of being able to see them and enjoy them and know other people, how the nation goes, and how they use the churches. I think it's absolutely wonderful that we have it, and we've been able to use it as much as we do. And as Father Grant, again, I'll refer back to the elderly. I'm sure so many, I know 3 or 4 people who have gone out and got iPads and things, haven't a clue what to do with them, but sons and daughters are setting them up and are in there.
That's wonderful. Also, Bishop Keenan, were talking about the laity's view of this, and for them, they see the Mass and it fills in a sense that lack of the holy sacrifice of the Mass. But for a priest, saying the Mass themselves without a congregation or without anyone on the altar, saying the prayers and the readings alongside you, what did that feel like over the last few months?
Again, John Patrick, that almost immediately I had the camera in front of me, and so I really didn't feel at all as though I was celebrating Mass on my own. Now, as a bishop, I'm a little bit different from priests, because half of the week, normally as a bishop, you celebrate Mass on your own, because we would maybe have a confirmation one place, a school Mass another, maybe a parish Mass another half of the week, but the other half of the week I would be celebrating my own. Since lockdown, I haven't really felt I've celebrated Mass on my own at all, really, that I really do feel that the congregation is very much with me, and so this question, which is a question we think is going to be a question that will come up more, which you raised there. What's the difference between virtual and real? I think the first question we need to ask ourselves is virtual real or not real or less real? Now, my firm conclusion from having celebrated Mass every day with an online congregation, virtual is real. The people there are really growing in faith. They really are growing in devotion to the Mass. They're really growing in love of the Eucharist when they pray the Rosary together. They're really growing in their love of our Blessed Mother Mary. So undoubtedly is having a real effect on their lives. And then the idea that there's a kind of a dichotomy. There were those people who are watching, attending Mass online are going to create a problem for Mass in church. That really hasn't been my experience reading every day the comments that are coming onto my live stream. And that what they're saying is the more we're participating in these online Masses, the more we're longing to get back to in-church Masses. It's probably going to have a better effect, as much likelihood it'll have a better effect on our church attendance than a negative kind of effect. But if I could just finish by saying that today we did an online Mass in my cathedral for all of our primary sevens in our St Andrew's Academy High School cluster. Myself and Father Jonathan were celebrating Mass. He's the school chaplain. Now, we are used to celebrating Mass still every day in church. Our lay faithful have been watching online for the last 3 months, but we needed someone to operate the camera, so I used my PA, asked my PA Marianne if she would do it. Now, she's attended online Mass every day, but she was moved, I would say, to tears being present at the Mass in church, in receiving Holy Communion. And she said afterwards, she said, I've loved Mass online, and I hope it's still very much a part of my spiritual life. But she said, there just is nothing like being in church.
Absolutely. One of the things that Father Grant brings to the table here today is he's probably the priest in Scotland that's been physically with the laity, thanks to the presence of Carfin Grotto and the space available throughout the entire time. And you've had the opportunity to speak to people outside, of course, respecting all the distance rules and things. What's your sense of this virtual being real?
I agree with what Bishop John is saying, that Mass is all about gathering physically together, but I've met one or two people who have been joining me every day for the daily Mass and the Sunday Mass, and they've told me that they feel very much part of a community, because it's the same people that are watching every day. And I talk about this virtual parish family which keeps expanding, and although the vast majority of them have never met one another, the names are now becoming more and more familiar, and many of them begin before Mass begins by wishing everybody good morning, and they say where they're from. And the other week I met a lady who I knew from Shotts, and she joins in the Mass too, and she said one of the days she had an appointment at the same time as I was saying Mass with a doctor or something. So she said, I went on to another streamed Mass. Oh, she says, I felt like an outsider because I didn't know any of the names that were coming up in the comments. She said, I didn't recognise any of those names. She said, so they do. I think there is a certain. My mother watches it every day. She thinks this is wonderful. And when they're in lockdown and isolation, it's a window to the wider world. It's all out there and life is going on. But I'd agree with what Bishop John said. Virtual in this sense is real in a sense. They do feel part of a parish community, and they're they're expressing congratulations and condolences and best wishes and promising prayers and so on to one another, even though they've never met and don't know who they are.
No, it's interesting. It's an interesting thought. Ray, obviously, we're looking to the benefits of it, and there are benefits, undoubtedly benefits towards the virtual church, so to speak. What would be the challenges going forward? Top of my mind, I can think of there are many people who maybe aren't able to get internet, can only rely on the BBC broadcast or the radio broadcast. There's also another aspect which you come into, that some churches just do not have the ability to put in a phone line or an internet cable. Hopefully not, but some churches just don't seem to be able to do it. So what's your kind of thoughts on that?
Yes, I think what would need to happen would be people would need to become more involved with the parish, who are savvy with communications. Technically, they understand how it works, and try to offer their services to people, parishioners who may well be disadvantaged because of this. They're not really getting the benefits of online services because the congregation online has changed. It's no longer the immediate parishioners who are there. The geographical spread now for parishioners is international. It's no longer somebody who's in Scotland who's maybe watching a Mass in Glasgow or Motherwell or Paisley. They're watching them from New York. They're watching them from all over the world. And now what you're beginning to see is a change in the dynamic of how the Masses are being viewed elsewhere. And it's really important that people, the parishioners within the local parishes, are brought up to speed with that. And Grace is terrific. She's been explaining how she and her friends have been actually buying computers to be able to plug into that. I think it then comes down to, as you mentioned, family to assist their parents, elderly people on their own. St Vincent de Paul may have a role to play in this, to go in and speak to people who may well be in a situation where they can't do it for themselves. So it might be chatting to someone, going in, seeing what can be done, and assisting them in trying to catch up with the technology. It's just a suggestion, but I think that's a question that we need to sit down and probably, work through a bit more, just to really see what the issues are and work out the logistics.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that's concerning me, I think, we do have high numbers watching Masses online. We do have a high number of people across the country tuning in, and Bishop John, you've expressed the idea that you don't think it's going to impact the future numbers of Masses. Part of the back of my mind, one of my worries is that there are also a large number of people who are not accessing any of the Masses online, either because they don't like it or either because it's a lot easier to skip a Mass when it's online and there's no Sunday obligation on them. And my worry is that when the Sunday obligation does return eventually, whenever that will be, those people will be in the habit of not going to Mass, and the numbers will be even worse than we are at just now. What's your thoughts on that?
Personally, I think that I think more people are becoming interested. You're having Catholics or lapsed Catholics who will be watching this. I mean, a lot of the statistics, when you look at, I was reading through on the Financial Times about this, and they were looking at the numbers of people who are tuning in. The numbers have rocketed, and it's predominantly younger people who seem to be doing it. So you have an audience there who you can tap into to appeal to them because they are tuned into what's happening, and encouraging them to come over and have a chat with somebody at a parish locally or whatever, to let them chat away to them and then get them to attend Mass. There's nothing to replace attending Mass. Let's be quite frank about that. There's absolutely nothing to replace it. But what we do have is a modern world that has other avenues to explore. We have a situation where masses, virtual masses, are available to people now, where before they really weren't tuned into that. They are now, they get it, they see what's happening. They've had 3 months to be able to work that one out for themselves. But returning to Mass is absolutely critical. It's what everybody understands and appreciates, and there's nothing to replace that. But what you can do, you can encourage people to Masses from the virtual Masses, and that gets one foot through the door. And I think it's really important for people to know that there's a place for them. That's where we come from with that one.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Do you think add to that, Grace?
Sorry, I was just thinking, John, back to, we made 1 or 2 discs of Masses, because although people, as we know, are not on the internet as such, a lot of elderly people still have DVDs, and they can play this Mass, albeit it's perhaps the same Mass that they're saying that they love it. And we've distributed 2 or 3 people that don't have internet, and also take them the parish bulletin each week and copies of what's on Facebook and all that, and they love it. So and also I do know, well, one in particular, 2, where the staff have set up DVDs and things that can give access to people in the home who are able to take part in it. I so there's lots of wonderful things coming out of the technology, really.
Bishop Keenan, how do we try and across that sort of issue we're facing just now, where we're going to try and blend eventually, that blended word's coming back again, where we're going to have a situation where it appears that numbers at Masses will be restricted. People will still be at home, not because they're not unhealthy or they can, but because the numbers are simply not feasible. What do we do in that situation? Because you might have a situation where a parish, for example, doesn't have any online presence, and half the parish isn't going to Mass, whereas somewhere like Carfin will have maybe more scope outside and other places, but they will have an online presence to complement it, like yourself. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I think picking up on the previous point you made, first of all, John Patrick, the anxiety that in which we might reach those who are digitally connected. What about those others who are not digitally connected? What I would say about that is that every single Catholic in Scotland now knows what it's like to be housebound. Previously, we didn't. Previously, the housebound were marginalised, and now the housebound is us. And we very quickly realised just how much online presence we had to have to feel connected. So I think we probably have now a very immediate experience of how isolated those who are not connected really are from the community, from the family. That's the church as well as from. And I think I would hope that awareness then would translate into pastoral action, that we can't leave them left out, as it were. I think going forward, in terms of the Sunday Masses, we would like to think now the way things are moving and very quickly, we would like to think, and the whole context is moving very quickly, we'd like to think within the month then we're going to be back in Sunday masses. What's really important is clearly that we're doing everything possible. We've got the former chief medical officer who is directing all of the work, Harry Burns of the Scottish Catholic Church. We're making it safe and phased and in collaboration with all other aspects of society, but we're also going to try to make it as normal an experience and as uplifting and as consoling and an inspiring experience of Mass as was in the past we can have under the circumstances. And that is to say that the people who leave from these Masses will feel a lot better than they did on the way in. So things are changing all the time, John Patrick. The 2 metre rule looks like it may go down to 1 metre. That would quadruple the number. Yeah, that would quadruple the number that we would have in our parishes if that were to be the case. All of that having been said, we want. I think we now want a blended approach. Now, it depends what you mean by the word blended, but society has gone from 2020 to 2030 in 3 months in terms of the online culture and savvy. And at the same time, the church has gone from 2020 to 2030 in 3 months in terms of new evangelization and an understanding, a confidence and ease about being missionary. Now, just like society isn't going to unlearn all of this technology, we're not going to unlearn all of this new evangelization. And so we're going to have this blended and supported approach. The one thing that we have to do as Catholics that requires us to be in church is Sunday Mass, normally speaking. That's where the obligation is. And mostly Catholics like to receive Holy Communion and the sacraments. You need to be there to receive Holy Communion and the sacraments. Everyone is saying that. There's no doubt about it. Nobody who's watching these things online disagrees with that or doesn't want it. But that's the only thing. There's no obligation to go to daily Mass. It's not as if we didn't have online daily Mass, people would go to their parishes. They probably wouldn't because they've got to get to work. Catechesis doesn't need to be in church. Rosary doesn't need to be in church. Spiritual reflections don't need to be in church. So very much of what we can provide to our people doesn't need to be in church. But what we have to do is remember and emphasise the times and the places where we have to be there.
Yeah, I think that's Father Grant's got an interesting take on that. Look, we've been doing the weekday masses from the Glass Chapel when the weather has been good, and you've noticed a really good upwards trend of the figures on that compared to what would it normally be at Carfin? 30 people?
Oh, well, there'll be about 40 people at weekday Mass, but we're now reaching probably 500 plus, sometimes a wee bit less, sometimes a wee bit more for weekday Mass. There's probably more people attending, if that's the word, weekday Mass than ever would have done before. And lots of people who would never have gone to weekday Mass are now. But the interesting thing is when Bishop John talked about evangelisation too, a lot of people are watching these with non-Catholic husbands or wives and children who haven't been to church for years, but they're watching this from their own living room. And often you get comments from people who say, my husband is watching this and he was moved to tears with such and so on, which is very gratifying, all right. So there is an aspect to that that's very good. But I agree with what Bishop John is saying, that we had the rosary every day during May. We had the rosary at night from the Grotto. It was only for May stopped. And so many people says, oh, I really missed that. The opportunity to pray with others that they never had that from their own home is something that they really appreciated. They felt that even though they were on their own, they weren't on their own in a sense. They were praying with other people, praying the Holy Rosary. And there's other things, as Bishop John said, there's morning prayer, evening prayer, Divine Mercy Chaplet and so on, that you don't need to be in church to do. And you can take part in that along with others. Yeah,
but it does, on the whole, it has been, I think, a very, very positive thing for the church. Ray, is there people, or are there people rather, that we're missing still, despite the fact we seem to be quite successful in reaching all age groups and all geographical areas of the country so far?
I don't think so. I think what seems to have happened is that people have had an opportunity to sit down and assess things differently. Their lives have been very fast before. Pre-COVID, life was 100 miles an hour. For the first time, probably in their lives, they've been able to sit down and focus on what matters most. And I think that's really important for people. There's going to be an awful lot of people after this who are going to be suffering issues, and they'll be looking for help. And I think that's probably where the church will come through to help people, to assist them in that situation. I know that I was over in Asia earlier on this year before all this started up and saw what was going on over there. And they have a very active archdiocese in Singapore. And I had a look at some of what was happening there. And this stuff is really pretty good. It's worth having a look at it. They're looking at, I'll show you this if you can. It's basically, it's information about stress, about parishioners and people who are suffering quite badly just now because of the loneliness of being at home, being locked down all the time. And this is giving them an opportunity to try to resolve that in some way. And I think these are all wonderful lessons that we're actually beginning to see emerging from what's been going on just now. And it's things that we can actually assist people with. We may feel they're lonely, there's nowhere to go. Now they're beginning to see that church is there. The church is there as a community. It's there with the congregation to help. And everybody's there to assist them in trying to help them out of a very difficult situation. So we can learn from that and we can assist people in trying to come to terms with what's been happening in their lives and give them some purpose to their lives and make them appreciate they're not alone. And I think that's an awful lot of people out there today that can do that.
Hey, one of the things, kind of off topic slightly, one of the things that's really been surprising in terms of figures to kind of emphasise this interest and rise in the church has been the programmes on BBC Scotland. And I'm not going to publicise a rival channel in Sancta Familia Media, but the BBC, of course, are the gold standard for programmes, and their figures were astonishing for preschool and for the First Communion and the fathers up in the Highlands as well. To me, this seems like a great opportunity, and I just think we, as a national church, as an individual church, as parishes and communities, need to think, well, what are we going to invest in to make this work? Is it social media? Is it fixed cameras? Is it, better, Grace mentioned DVDs, is it, or even Father Stephen Bailey brought in the dialer mass as well, these sort of things. How much and how far do we need to go with tech, Bishop John?
I think that's the dialer mass. The first Sunday that it got 500 people phoning in for that mass, which was just really incredible. In my own diocese in Paisley, I think now about half of our priests have invested money getting webcams in and good systems in, and they're looking at some are using Facebook live stream, some are using YouTube, some are using parish websites and web pages and webcams and what have you. I think we do, John Patrick, I think we have to now see this is part of what we do, and I would certainly commend any parish priest who invested in this, not least because one thing that we've mentioned here, there and everywhere, but it's worth focusing on, it has created an enormous revival of the domestic church. The parish church has always been built in the church of the home. The church in the home is strong, and the family is strong, and faith in the home is strong, then the parish is strong, and the Catholic Church is strong. I used to like to go to, when I was a seminary in Rome, San Clemente, one of the magnificent basilicas in Rome. But what I liked about it is when you went into pray, and you just down below, about 10 feet below, down below in the foundations, that the basilica was built on a family home that was used for Sunday Mass for hundreds of years during the time where Christianity was illegal in the Roman Empire. It was only after it was legalised under Constantine that they built a basilica there. And I think that's a metaphor for the church. The church is always founded and strong on the basis of the strength of the faith in the home. And what we saw, I think, in the last 30, 40 years, used to be the case in our grandparents. We went into a grandparents' home, you knew immediately it was a Catholic home because there's a Catholic image on the wall, a Sacred Heart, or there's a Catholic statue on the mantelpiece, a Blessed Mother statue. And in the last 30 or 40 years, all of those images left our home. Now they're back with a bang. They're just electronic images now. And as the kids come in to get a Coke out of the fridge, they might be listening. They stop because Dad's sitting praying the rosary online in the sofa, Mum's sitting watching Mass online. It has brought Christ and the faith and an ecclesial spirit into our homes now. So I think that's where we want to really invest in the digital media. Yet our people will come to us in church, in real space. Digital media makes that a two-way street. They come to us and we go into their home. So blended doesn't mean either or, it means both ands. It means that two-way street, that double dynamic where the virtuous circle of faith between the parish and the church continues.
And I think there's generally a consensus among all four of us here, all five of us, that it is a good thing and there's a great opportunity here. But again, as we come towards that date, whenever that's going to be, I think there's mention that it's going to be no earlier than July 23rd, according to the Scottish Government roadmap, that masses will return publicly, limited in some way. I know that's causing some sort of consternation online amongst laity and some clergy who maybe want it quicker, because we're seeing other sectors of society opening up fully. One of the things that struck me was that John Swinney, the Deputy First Minister, almost with a flip of a switch, reversed this whole process of blended learning for schools to suggest we're going to be fully back to normal in schools on August 15th. Yet at the same time our churches won't be, which I find strange. What's your thoughts on that, Father Grant? Given you've got a different scenario from most churches, you've got a wider space where you might have more flexibility than other churches.
Yeah, well, first of all, on that last point you said, I would agree with you that I'm a bit disappointed. I mean, I believe that on the 29th of June, most non-essential shops, many indoor workplaces, visitors attractions, zoos, outdoor sports courts, playgrounds will all be allowed to open. And I think I welcome that. But I'm seriously disappointed that our First Minister announced that we'll probably have to wait until at least the very earliest, the 23rd of July, before our churches can open for Holy Mass, which means that our good Catholics will be deprived of the Eucharist, the bread of life, while pubs and restaurants and hairdressers and barbers and museums and galleries and cinemas and libraries are all allowed to open and resume business from the 15th. So I think that's poor show, and I think she should be challenged on that. But to go back to your other point about the outdoor masses, I'm hoping, seriously hoping, that I will be able, because Carfin's better placed than anyone to offer outdoor mass. And I'm aware that although social distancing, whether it be 2 metres or 1 metre, will still be respected, that there will be no need for people to wear a mask if it's an outdoor event. The numbers allowed might well be more than could be accommodated in our churches with the distancing. And so I'm really anxious to know what number limits our First Minister will put on these public gatherings whenever they're eventually allowed. I think too as well, talking to others about it too, that some people might still be a little afraid to go into a church building, and I think the greater numbers that can be accommodated will mean as well that there won't be the same temptation to multiply the number of masses being offered.
Yeah, I mean, Grace, you mentioned earlier on that you're perhaps slightly more apprehensive about going to church for prayer, and you will go back to Mass when Mass becomes available. What just now do you think the church is doing? Do you think it's doing the correct thing just now with the regulations in place, restrictions? Do you feel comfortable with them? Do you feel that you'd be assured of your safety if you went to a public Mass in a Catholic church?
Well, I'm hoping and praying that the bishops have thought long and hard about all these decisions, because personally I feel this virus, are we moving in the way that we think, oh, it's going. It's not going. It's going to be here for a long, long time. So therefore we must have the utmost, absolute, everything in place to take all the precautions we can. I'd love to go back. I'm delighted to go back. But, I hate that word, but I do hope, how are we going to arrange these curtailed numbers at Mass? Are there measures in place if somebody does turn up who, some churches have got the technology of temperature taking, etc. If somebody turns up with a temperature, is there somebody there? Has it all been measured out as to, do they get turned away? Does then everybody get turned away? There are a lot of, the logistics are enormous about it. And I'm sure our bishops will have thought long and hard into all this. But I just keep praying, that's my last decade of the Rosary every night, is for them, that they have been given the wisdom to really get into it very deeply and think long and hard, because every life is precious, every life. And when God gave us this life, he didn't just give us a spiritual life, he gave us a human life as well. And he expects us to take care of that life and make it work for us and for him. So, as I say, I still have reservations. I won't say I won't be going. I probably will be there, no doubt, as soon as Mass comes back. Not for prayer, no. I don't think I need to go for prayer. Although I would still love to see all the folks I know and have this lovely feeling of camaraderie and friendship and the spiritual feeling that's there in your church. But as I say, just to get back to, I do pray for the bishops. They are given the wisdom to really think long and hard and make the right decisions.
We had a Hope's Grace to bring in today, Sir Harry Burns, who's the former Chief Medical Officer and an advisor to the bishops, the clinical advisor to the bishops in this sort of situation, but he's not, unfortunately, he is with a meeting with Nicola Sturgeon, the First Minister. So maybe Bishop John, you could, some knowledge, you know, obviously not your medical knowledge, but you have knowledge of what the working group is talking about just now. Maybe you could address some of those concerns that Grace has just now.
Yeah, certainly, and I'd be happy to do that. But I think what I would say, John Patrick, is that as bishops we didn't want to leave it to our wisdom at all, because we are pastors, but we're in the fortunate position of having in Scotland a highly qualified and specialised lay faithful. And so what we immediately did is we set up a COVID infection control working group, and we were awfully grateful to Professor Sir Harry Burns, who, as you know, as most people know, was the Chief Medical Officer for the Scottish Government, and a really successful one at that. And he has chaired and steered our working committee in putting in all of the infection control protocols across the country. He also brought on to his committee Professor Stephanie Bell, who's essentially on the team organising these things for the University of Glasgow as another scientist. So we handed that over to scientists, who are also people of faith, but scientists who, and what we charge them with is make sure our churches are the safest places outside of the house. Now, clearly, if you need to shield, and there's a good reason for that, then what we are advising is stay in the house, stay down in self-isolation. But what we're saying is, if you're in a position where you can leave the home, your home, then the churches will be the safest places, bar none. For that, now, yeah, I think Grace is right. Somebody could have a temperature, but similarly, they could have a temperature in the Asda or in the Morrisons or what have you. What we are ensuring is that the social distancing is going to be there, that people will be social distance coming into the church. They'll go to their places, they'll remain in their places, and when they come out for the communion, they'll come out in a social distance way, and when they leave the church, they'll leave in a different way from the one when they come in. No hymn books, no bulletins, no collection plates. So I'm really confident. We clearly want our people to come back to church. Everybody does, but want the people to be safe as well. And all I can do is give my assurance that we have done everything to make our churches, if not literally as safe as houses, the very next best thing. So I would like to think that we were able to take away people's reservations. We'll never take away people's fears, because fear is just there until this lockdown has created a lot of fear, and fear is in us now. But we will eventually get over our fears by gradually coming back. As society comes back into to swing, then we'll I think those fears will go. So we probably can't take away people's fears, but we can take away their reservations. Just to say, we mentioned it, the announcement of the Scottish Government about the times for getting back. Yeah, I mean, I think my email train has been inbox has been full today with people who can't really understand why the churches are delayed when other places that aren't going to be as safe as the churches have been open. You've got to feel for the government. This is an enormously difficult thing for them to be doing, and in a changing scene all the time. All I would say is that we are continuing to talk to the government. We're talking to the government today, pretty much as we speak. Just as you say, John Patrick, things change with education very quickly. It may well be the case that what has the date that's been given won't be the date that eventually takes place. But we are continuing to make the point to the government that we're doing all we can to guarantee things are safe. They're safer than other areas of society that the government are allowing to open before us, and we're continuing to talk to them about the scientific logic of that.
And obviously, in a practical sense, there's a
John,
hello, guys. Hello.
Sorry, John, could I just pick up that? That was wonderful. I enjoyed that, and I welcome being told the logic behind the decisions. Would it perhaps have been, I've maybe missed it, maybe there has been a publication, would it have been perhaps possible for the bishops to have put out a wee statement saying why they now think, because they've been given all this expert advice, which a lot of people may not really know, they don't, well, they will know most of it, but just saying that why this decision has now been taken, and it's now felt that it's fine, perfectly fine, and safe to go into church and for mass, etc., etc. Just short wee posting, just to tell them what Bishop John just told me, which I found was very, very interesting.
Well, that's the aim of this discussion, is to bring that real questions and real concerns people have directly to the bishops, to show that the bishops and also the priests as well, we're all connected, we're all the one church. You know, there's not the church for the bishops, the church for the priests, the church for the laity. We're all members of this church, and members of society facing up this horrendous challenge of the coronavirus. But I'm more hopeful now. I mean, I'm probably one of the people who were most anxious about the coronavirus before it kicked off, and now I'm in a room with Father Grant 2 years away, when I wouldn't have dreamed of doing that 2 months ago. But you know, I just think you're right, there's a scientific aspect to it. You have to look at the element of risk which is in the society. Obviously Sir Harry's not here to discuss the exact numbers and risks available, but if you look at today's figures, we've had sadly 2 more deaths and 4 new cases, which, you know, is remarkable suppression of the virus. So that's given me more confidence that with these protocols in place, with the face masks, which are a bit uncomfortable, I admit, with some churches have temperature readings at Carfin, which is really good. That's a very good thing. I find that very comforting. You see that everyone's going in there. Okay, there might be asymptomatic cases, but people, the majority of them are screened for temperature and they don't have a temperature, they can go in. So I do feel comfortable and I feel secure going back to church. But what Father Grant, what's your kind of thoughts on how that's been playing out in your parish over the last week, these restrictions and the wearing of face masks, the temperature check, the spacing? How's it worked in Francis Xavier?
It worked very, very smoothly. The people know, because we did put out a post in the Facebook to say this is what you will be asked to do. sanitize your hands, put your face mask on or face covering, go to a seat allocated to you, and so it's all one-way traffic. They knew that all those protocols would be in place, and they've been very compliant with everything that's been asked of them. So I'm very happy the way things have gone. We have got a good team of 30 stewards who are keeping the church open for 3.5 hours or so every day. I don't know how long we can sustain that if it's going on and on and on, because these are people, we're very happy to do it, and they may well be willing to do it for weeks on end. But I would hope that things might ease off a little more in time to come.
It's Ray, it's one of those things, isn't it, that face masks are uncomfortable and washing your hands are uncomfortable, but would that help you feel more comfortable going back into a church with those restrictions in place?
Yes, I think it's just common sense, to be honest with you. The one thing I learned when I was over in Asia in January was that people wearing masks over there, that's viewed as a sign of to your neighbour, because what you're actually doing is stopping passing anything on to anyone else, and it makes eminent sense, and it's something which has helped them control what's been going on just now. And I think the measures that you're looking at in terms of face masks, which I completely advocate, because I think it's just sensible. It might be inconvenient to put it on, but if it saves life, there's no argument. It just makes so much sense. And washing hands, it's just basic hygiene. It's just keeping yourself safe, and also your grandparents, and also everyone else. And if the kids are going to school, whenever that happens, it's a thing you have to bear in mind as well, that they may not show symptoms of it, but they may well pass it on. And these are things that we've all been told, so we understand what's happening with that. Face masks, definitely. I don't know why we haven't made it mandatory, to be quite honest with you, because I looked through basically it was a one of this, and it showed you when there's no face mask, the chances of contracting the virus are up to between 90% plus. So by the time you start working your way down and everybody's wearing a mask, it's down to practically zero. And there's numerous cases of this. And I think when you look at America, they made it mandatory. It's mandatory to wear masks in various places in this country now. It's starting from Monday. So there's an acceptance of it. And I think that would save people. When you go to Mass, I think what might be worth looking at is to have a video of a walkthrough in a chapel or in the church. Let people see what they're going to be walking into. You'll have signs on seats, you'll have restrictions on access to certain seats. So if you video that and you walk through, you can let people then see online exactly what to expect when they go there. And it will be, and if it's not just where they go to, what you can say is this is going to be replicated across the country, and this is what you should expect to see. So it gives people comfort as they go to Mass, not to worry about what to expect, because they've already seen it. So it's just really educating people before they go there to give them comfort about what to expect when they go to Mass.
I mean, that's one of the things which it's a good point. Actually, we have made videos for private prayer and how to enter a church for private prayer, but what we do hope to do is a follow-up for when Masses return and what the situation is going to be there. Bishop Keenan, what are the bishops in the back of their minds? Are they thinking that the dispensation will be there for the whole year or be removed for the whole year, or will it come back soon? What's the kind of thoughts there? Obviously, there's a worry, and I'm seeing a lot of articles online that perhaps maybe just like in the 1960s where we removed the requirement for eating meat on a Friday and replaced it with an act of charity, that people just ditched it altogether. Is there a concern amongst the clergy and the bishops that the dispensation for Mass has been undermined already?
There's not really, Patrick. I mean, I think everyone knows that this situation is, to use the overused word, unprecedented. No one's ever experienced this. The world has never experienced this in peacetime. And I think the circumstances are so exceptional that there probably won't be precedents from things like, as you say, the relaxation of the no meat on Fridays. We have no thoughts at all about when the dispensation from salvation will be lifted. All of our thoughts just now are in the next phase, that our churches are open. That's gone really, really well. People have really enjoyed coming in to church. Grace is right that you, one of the things we discovered, you can pray anywhere, you can pray at home, but the Blessed Sacrament, the presence of the Lord in the Eucharist is localised. It's in a place, and there's nothing like for people coming in and being in front of the Blessed Sacrament with the red sanctuary lamp lit, and praying in the presence of the Lord. And then our next thing is thinking about the Sunday Masses, the return to Sunday Masses. We've mentioned that we've got the welcoming committees and stewards in all of the churches. They have been trained, they know exactly what to do, and no one will come into churches not escorted by them and directed by them. And if they've not brought their own masks, then the welcoming stewards will have masks there, so that everyone has a mask. But all of that having been said, I think my hope is that after the first couple of weeks of these Sunday Masses, I think people will be assured, those who come, this is safe as houses, as I've said. And then all of those hygiene and infection control things will be in the background, and the experience is going to be, I'm back at Mass. I'm back in this Mass, and it's just wonderful to be back in church to Mass, and I'm receiving Holy Communion, and it's just wonderful to receive the human and the spiritual taste of Holy Communion again, and it's wonderful to be back here. I think quite quickly, I would like to think quite quickly, within a month or so, these control measures are going to remain as stringent as ever, but we'll get used to them, and the experience of Mass, even in those circumstances, will feel as normal and as encouraging and as consoling, as uplifting when we leave as it did before.
Do you think add to that, Father Grant, that sort of hopeful vision?
Well, yeah, I agree with Bishop John. We have to keep all these stringent measures in place to safeguard people's health and so on. But if I might be allowed to look at the Mass from a liturgical point of view, and you know that old joke about you can negotiate with a terrorist but not with a liturgist. If you look at it from a liturgical point of view, Mass, such as we have celebrated it for the last 50 years or more since the Second Vatican Council, is by its very nature contagious, in that there's physical contact, there's a physical gathering, there's a shaking of hands, distances are shortened, we drink from the one bread, we eat from the one bread, drink from the one chalice, our voices are joined in harmony with singing, and so on. So I'm a little uneasy that the prescribed protocols, albeit I do understand why, that when we return to our churches, they are in a sense ignoring the fact that the Mass is a sacred communal meal. And I just can't wait till the day comes when we can go back to that, where, there is contact, there is singing, there is all this gathering and shaking of hands and so on. So to me, the Mass will not be the Mass until we return to that. So I'm hopeful that will come eventually. I just wanted to say that, yeah.
Yeah, and Grace, how do you feel? Do you feel different after hearing some of the kind of views expressed from Bishop Keenan and Father Grant and Ray? Or are you still going to take it easy, more carefully, gradually, which is your right to do so for your sake and your family's sake?
Oh, I will take it very carefully, John. I respect everything that has been said, and I'm as desperate as anyone to get back, because I miss it so terribly. And another thing that has happened as has been going on is that I have a deep regret that I'm going to go back to not being able to be a Eucharistic minister and a reader and all that kind of thing that I've been involved in before. So we will all have lost out in a way. Hopefully we'll all gain in the end. But I do know a lot of people, we've not been questioning each other, but just in conversation, doing the self-distancing in gardens and one thing and another. A lot of people have expressed the deep wanting and longing and loving to get back, but are we absolutely as sure as we can possibly be that we're not going to go into something? What on earth would you feel like if somebody, God forbid, did trace back this tracing, to a church? I would be absolutely ill. I'd be horrified. I don't think it will happen, don't get me wrong. And I'm a very, believe it or not, this sounds pessimistic, but I'm a very optimistic person, as well knows Dr. John. But I really do hope we are not rushing too quickly into thinking that this wee coronavirus is a way out the way and she won't come back because she's deadly. She's lurking there. She's waiting for the first person to make a mistake. And we're not going to be the first to make the mistake. Sure we're not.
Hopefully not.
There's one more thing I was going to say. It's not really related to anything we were saying, but what we're experiencing, an absence of the Eucharist, an absence of Holy Communion and Mass, they have experienced for years in the mission countries in South America and Africa. And although we say that to people, we talk about Vocation Sunday and we talk about we have to pray for more priests and religious and how so much of the part of the world is deprived of the Eucharist that we take for granted. Now we're experiencing what they have experienced for years, and I hope that will make us more aware of our need to pray for vocations.
Well, I think that's absolutely really important point to end on. We've had a lot of really interesting points raised here today. I hope that those who are watching it will find it something of interest to them, and certainly the situation does seem a lot more positive for the church and for the country as a whole. We continue to pray that will be the case. So I'd like to thank you all for your time. It's been very good of you to come out. Yeah, fire away, Grace.
Grace. No, just one wee thing, nothing to do with what we'll be talking about, but is there any directive, Bishop John, on having some funeral services in churches? I know some have started to have them already. Can everyone have them? Or, because that has been one of the biggest heartache. I've been out at services, lovely, done very tastefully, emotionally, and everything that could be done was done, but it's not the same as being your coffin in the church and lying there with the Lord and then being taken from there to the rest. And I know that has been a big, big, big item in many people's thoughts. Is there any sort of directive?
So just exactly on that point, Grace, that as the bishops we were really moved by sadness at the way that so many Catholics not only had not been able to say goodbye before their loved ones died, but weren't able to say a final farewell in the way they'd want. So we were really concerned that as soon as we opened our churches, we would also approve funerals and requiem masses in the church. So as soon as the church doors were open, they have been quite quickly followed in by funeral parties for requiem masses. That having been said, the bishops have chosen to limit the numbers to 12 or 15. Yeah. Really, again, really kind of sad that that's the case, but it's kind of it's a balance. It's to allow families now to look at the spiritual consolation, but to also to ensure, which is equally a priority in our minds, that as they have that safely.
Great, wonderful.
Are you okay, Ray, as well? Any more questions?
No, I'll just make a very quick comment, and it is to say that I think the church has to be congratulated. They're taking very swift action to protect their parishioners. And in years going by, and you're looking at the plague, you're looking at the 1918 flu epidemic, it wasn't as fast off the blocks as it has been with this. And I think that the church has to be congratulated for taking action very swiftly to protect its parishioners through the whole of the UK, not just in Scotland. And I think that's something that we should be thankful for.
Yes, indeed.
Well, thanks very much. That is a very good way to end our positive note. And there are many positives in this whole discussion. So I'd like to thank Father Jim Grant for coming here physically, back to his own parish, his own studio that he blessed 2 years ago, the Boss Head Sancta studio. And I'd like to thank you three, Bishop Keenan, Ray and Grace, for joining us distantly on the screen, which is far away over there. But you're keeping safe and well, which is good to see. So thanks so much for your time, and keep praying for us all and the whole country.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Okay.